Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of IT Operations Unplugged. I'm Brenton O'Callaghan, one of your hosts, and once again I'm joined by my co-host John Appleby. Welcome back, John. Why do you never actually say hi? But anyway, we won't go there. I'm also joined by our special guest this week, Phil Taphouse from ITOM Solutions. Phil, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today, and I hope we don't scare you off too much.
Thanks for having me. It's cool to be here.
Excellent. Awesome. So our topic for the show today is really quite simple. We're going to be talking about everything ITOM, which is why you're on the stream, Phil. Talking about the changing face of ITOM over the last, obviously the last year, because everything's changed in the last year, but also the last 5 and 10 years, and how have things evolved as the rest of the IT world has evolved. So it'll be a really interesting discussion. And I have a bunch of stuff I'll be segueing us through as we go through. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Phil, why don't you give us a couple of minutes about who you are, where you're based, and what's keeping you interested at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So Phil Taphouse, I'm the founder and CEO of ITOM Solution, and we're an end-to-end ITOM shop, as the name would suggest. We mostly focus around the ServiceNow platform, but deal with all of the plug-in tools that really make the end-to-end ITOM journey actually possible. Because it's not just one toolkit that's going to get this vision delivered. It's a combination of toolkits and input streams. So that's kind of a little bit about me. We're a specialist shop based predominantly out of the UK, offices down in London, but full UK-wide coverage, and really seeing phenomenal growth this year. With we're a young company. We're a year old. We went from me and a rough design on the back of a cardboard box to 49 staff and some pretty major clients, and some really cool IP that we're delivering for our clients out there. So yeah, that's me really.
Excellent. And that was the point where John said he was going to jump in while I did all the logistics of the tweeting and stuff, which of course never happened. The best laid plans. I know that's a great rundown, and it's great to hear that story as well of the expansion over the last year. And obviously that in itself is why we're here talking about this right now. There's obviously been an explosion from an IT operations management perspective. How has that manifested for you? What kind of made you think, hey, this is something we need to focus on? And then what's changed since, and what's caused that explosion?
Yeah, I think there's been a kind of a big combination of things, right? So I did a big project for a major utility down here in the south of England, and we went in and we looked at all of the toolkits they had, and this is kind of where the formation of the idea for the solution came about, and the formation of the company. There were some really kind of old toolkits that were in place that weren't working, that needed desperately to be refreshed. And the idea of AI ops and ITOM isn't a new one. It's been around, since the 80s. Everyone's tried to build command centers. I personally think that the technology stack hasn't been there in order to enable you to actually deliver it. And it's only in the last 2 years, maybe 3, pushing it, that these platforms have really started to mature.
Catch up.
Yeah, exactly, to really deliver what you need. Your app dynamics and your Dynatraces for application monitoring. Back ends, you've got really good solutions out there like Loom now for log analytical. The stuff that Splunk's doing is really cool. The ServiceNow stuff's really cool. And I think the technology has finally caught up to the vision of what everyone wanted to build. So while we were doing this work for the utility, it was really the first combination of all of these toolkits and devices starting to work together and really talk. And then we were able to deliver what everyone wanted, which is real-time analytics and overlay on where the problems were, and even better, using machine learning and artificial intelligence to predict where things are going to go wrong based on those metrics that we're firing through. And I think with the times that we got now, I don't want to use the C word, the COVID word, but it's inevitable in these times.
I'm not going to use that hashtag. The minute you use that hashtag, all bad things happen in terms of rankings and stuff. So let's ignore that one.
I won't say it again. I think COVID, everyone's been talking about digital transformation for a long time. Right. It's not a new thing. It's been a buzzword that Gartner kicks around for years. But I think with the force to work from home, the force for everyone going digital. I know some organizations that have completely sunk because they just were not geared up for it at all. And actually some have gone out of business. And others that were geared in that direction, maybe you're kind of more nimble, younger companies, or they've got fresh IT management in there that have recognized that's the future, have actually really accelerated. The amount of choice that people out there have now as consumers, and let's take a bank as an example of this, right? If your mobile banking platform is not up, to a point where I can't log in on a regular basis and do what I need to do, I'm going to leave your bank online. I'm going to transfer my cash online, and I'm going to go to a provider that can support my needs, where they've got a stable offering and a stable platform. So, the whole shift, number one, through choice of technology out there and platforms and offerings, and then the drive of everyone using everything digital now has really driven, I think, a lot of the ITOM advancement and deployments out there. We had stuff that was slated for our books kind of middle of next year for deployments. Customers actively putting that forward, saying, we need to get on top of this now. We really want to make sure that our platforms can be stable, and this is the way to understand, if it's not stable, where are the problems, and to predict these problems before they happen.
So what you're describing there is kind of in the very recent past. It's, hey, these are the companies that have reacted well in the post or the new normal, whatever phrase you want to use to describe it. One of the things we like to focus on here, and we focused on in previous episodes, is it's never too late to start the journey.
Of course.
So what advice, what areas would you be looking as a kind of a, hey, listen, if you're going to start somewhere, look here, because this is where you're going to get some quick wins. This is where you're going to get some really good benefit and return on investment. Where's the starting point?
Yeah, all right. So it's going to be a bit of a long-winded answer, and it might be a bit boring, so I apologize. And it goes back to one of the, and we're just going to talk IT, right? This is where it's going to be driven from. And it goes back to one of the fundamental building blocks of your entire IT department, which is the CMDB. A service-aware CMDB is absolutely critical for going on this journey. So if you want to talk banking language, you're talking about mapping your end-to-end SEEPs or your critical end-to-end processes. Any kind of regulated service is going to be doing that by demand of regulator. But actually, it's phenomenal business practice for any organization out there to do. Whether you're brand new or a couple of years in, very easy to kind of get that level of transparency, or even if you're a cornerstone kind of older organization, understanding, number one, what services you offer internally and externally, so internal clients and customers, and then two, understanding which applications actually make those services up, and then the lower infrastructure underneath it. Once you've got that in place, and I'm not going to lie, that's not an easy thing for some of the older organizations to do. And hence the reason that we exist. We come in and help organizations do this, right? To understand what it is. Then you can really start to pull it apart and say, okay, in the world of shared infrastructure that we have, either that shared cloud infrastructure or shared data center infrastructure, public or private, you're going to have a number of network devices or a number of servers or databases which are going to be shared amongst different applications underpinning critical services.
Exactly.
And now you can really start to pinpoint and understand what the severity impact of losing one of those devices is. So if that database goes down, you're going to lose access to these services, which has this knock-on effect to your clients, internal or external. Or even, taking that a level deeper, maybe you're seeing timeouts between the server and the database. So now it leads you to deeper levels of analysis. And this is where AI Ops then starts to step in. Because if you've got the right toolkit that can understand and differentiate what these things are, then you can actually send the tickets to the right teams to fix it, rather than everyone running around not knowing what's broken, right? And that's really the magic of the whole ITOM journey.
Right. And is there a close link there to discovering the shadow IT elements as well of the areas that really are core to your business and running your business, but you're actually not aware that, that system is actually involved in the running of our website? How did that happen? And this kind of stuff. Is it about discovering those potential areas that need focus?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So once you've got the structure in place, right, the next phase on from that, and my recommendation is to go on the CSDM V2 or V3 if you're that advanced kind of models within your CMDB. It's just so powerful. Once you've got the model and the structure, the next thing to do is to then go and start discovering either via some discovering program integrations out into these different systems if you're running cloud or data center or whatever it may well be, in order to suck that data in and bring it through. Because then you've got real-time information about the assets. And if you've got a toolkit that's smart enough, I mentioned some tools earlier like ServiceNow run an amazing discovery. Appleby and Dynatrace, all very capable of building these relationships in the CMDB to help you understand when these transaction flows are going. And you're exactly right. The amount of times we do this in organizations, and people weren't aware that, this database underpins 90% of our business transactions through international payments or whatever it may well be. All of a sudden, then it's bumped up the priority rankings. You make sure you've got proper DR protocols in place, it's tested and so forth, because you're having outages because someone's restarting a server that this database sits on as part of a maintenance schedule, and they're not even aware they're causing issues.
Exactly.
Right? So now you've got a rich source of data. Everything's mapped through. You've gone out and discovered everything. That's all linked into that architecture that you've defined in the first wave. Now you can start moving on to the next points about plumbing integrations and having that kind of strategic vision about how and why you want to use this platform.
Nice. I think that's a great discussion. John, I'm going to bring you in at this point. Any thoughts based on what we've discussed so far? I was wondering if the background noise was me or you, and I think it might have been you.
It's me, which is why I've been quite a bit muted. My toddler is having some kind of meltdown of some kind.
That was me yesterday. So
you were having the meltdown yesterday.
There are two closed doors.
Yeah, let's go with that.
I may poke my head out in a minute and see what's going on, but I think it's just a toddler meltdown and nothing serious.
Okay.
But he might want a hug. So,
so
what I was wondering is, do you see SAP coming up in this context? Let me preface. So we live in a really SAP centric world where that's all we deal with, and obviously your purview is broader than that. I'm just wondering if it's something that you see coming up in conversations and what that means, if anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah, no, massively all the time. And it's these SAP systems, when they're implemented into organization, he's gone. I'm going to answer his question anyway. I'm assuming.
I wonder if he thought I could take him off screen or something and he could pretend to still be there, but no. Now, the one thing I do know is he because he's wearing AirPods, he can still hear us, which is quite amusing, but he can't respond.
Should have had a cardboard cutout there.
Yeah, exactly.
So the SAP platforms, absolutely.
There we go.
They come up time and time again because of their importance to organizations, like the criticality of them. When they're in place. I mean, again, this utility and a bunch of utilities that we work with, they underpin the entire billing platform,
Yes.
and that's how these companies make money and stay afloat.
Absolutely.
And reinvest, right? So the ability not only to, and it's interesting with the shift more into kind of hosted SAP into like S4HANA and all of that kind of jazz, that the metric data you can pull out, I think now, is way better than it ever was, and obviously your toolkit is massively important in that space, and we've done some really cool things and are building some really cool things around your toolkit at the moment. Not to give any spoilers, that'll come later.
No.
But being able to, and this is the point of a digital command center, being able to bring everything into a single place, having rich sources of data, be it from your toolkit, from these other ones that are out there, from storage, from databases, network, everything into a place against the architectural model we kind of defined. So that if you've got a payment, an online user web journey, which is a payment to pay their bill, that comes in through this load balancer, hits this web front end, communicates out with this server or this mainframe or whatever that may be, hits the SAP system to process the data. You want to be able to follow that journey from the point I log on the edge of your platform all the way through to understand, number one, is my transactions completing? Am I having any issues? Is there significant lag? Why are we not selling as many cars, or we're not online? Oh, it's because users are timing out.
Why has Europe completely dropped out and you're actually still getting stuff from the US? Maybe your CDN is down or something along these lines. I completely agree.
Absolutely. So it depends on the type of industry you are, where they're going to lean more on which systems are more important. But anyone that's taking on major online kind of payments or has that subscription model, they're going to be in the SAP world, and it's hugely important that they're supported.
Yeah. I know you probably got most of that, John, because you got the wireless headphones in.
No, I got all of it. No, I could hear it all. Yeah. No, I didn't ask a question and then just walk away without being able to hear it. I deliberately have my microphone is separate to my monitoring earphones, so I can shut off the microphone. Say hi, Alexander. He's sad about something. I'm not sure what. But,
he wants to get involved in this conversation.
Exactly.
Tell us your thoughts about ITOM, Alexander.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, he can't hear, of course.
Oh, right.
He doesn't have an AirPod. Otherwise, we'd have an echo. But yeah, it's interesting with COVID and children, and I believe if you got to go and grab them, you got to go and grab them.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and sorry, I'm asking all the questions because I'm just reflecting on this. Now, one of the things that we see in this area is that ServiceNow just seems to be becoming just the powerhouse. I don't think I talk to a customer that doesn't have ServiceNow or that isn't looking at ServiceNow. First of all, I assume you see the same, but I'm also wondering, I'm just sort of wondering if this market will consolidate into a real leader, because whilst ServiceNow is great, right? You still need Dynamics or Dynatrace or Splunk or Avantra or I don't know, New Relic. You can't. There isn't a vendor that provides an end-to-end solution, which is really interesting. I'm just wondering. I've been wondering whether the market will consolidate into a clear leader who has an end-to-end suite.
Yeah, I think, and that's a really interesting question, and you're completely right. ServiceNow is pretty much the de facto, anyone operating IT across the globe. The $100 billion company now is, and there's a reason for that because of the power of the platform. And I think it's an interesting point you make, because I always assumed that ServiceNow would never want to go into that space. They're not a monitoring solution was always the answer you got back for them. But if you look at the recent acquisitions,
Loom.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Literally,
Sweagle, Loom.
Yeah, you look at the recent acquisitions, and they've even switching in the new release of Discovery to agent-based discovery rather than agentless-based discovery. There's a reason behind this, so I honestly think they're trying to move into that space. They've got quite a battle on their hands because Dynatrace, AppD with the Thousand Eyes integration and all of that jazz. Your solution are extremely advanced in this area and have been running at it for a long time. But I wouldn't put it past them to try and move into that space and give that end to end. Whether that would be the right.
Well, that's
move.
what McDermott knows.
Yeah.
He knows the suite, right? I mean, SAP is the king of the end to end. And also he is historically, and it's actually really interesting. He's historically been really acquisitive, particularly when it comes to buying companies to grow market shares, but there's a really subtle difference in ServiceNow, which is they've created a quite pure platform, and the acquisitions that they've made, they've re-platformed onto the Now platform, right?
Yep.
So if they were to go and buy, let's say, AppD, whether they could or not, it's a publicly traded company, but let's say they could buy them out the public markets. I don't know whether it's too big to re-platform onto the Now platform. I don't know whether they could buy the market.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with the point. I don't know if it's the right thing for them to try and do. I think they're far better off staying as the consolidator, the master of masters, and not trying to do that. A lot of the digital command bridges we build has ServiceNow sat in the middle with the full ITOM stack running, or a good proportion of that, and then you've got tools such as your AppD or Dynatrace or SolarWinds or whatever feeding information in. You're doing all of the data processing inside ServiceNow, where we've built some IP on top of it called our context engines, which uses the architecture I was talking about before to understand where actually the problem is and then take the definitive action. Goes on to ITOM Relay, which notifies people in Teams or SMS and kicks off group calls and all that jazz. But the core kind of point there is that and again, it's some of our IPs. I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm not just plugging what we do, but the thing is, we never wanted to detract away from what those toolkits do phenomenally well. You know, if you get an event that comes in that's flagged by the system and it's turned into an alert for information and goes through into incident, we always have a deep link that goes back to the originator, be Appleby or Dynatrace or whatever that may all be, to take you to that database query or that line of code that's causing the issue, you know, coming back into your toolkit to say, this is the problem, your database is locked or whatever that may well be. And then to run the proper deep diagnosis in that tool, which is what it's been designed for. You know, ServiceNow is the absolute king of workflow, automation, all of that stuff. I think it's a wrong move for them to try and go and develop an AppD or a Dynatrace.
And be everything to everybody, which is, and let's face it, it's all about this shift at the moment that we're definitely seeing, which is people trying to get the best of breed technologies for individual use cases, especially when you're talking about something like SAP, which inherently is special. It always has been. You know, being able to reach into, whether it be, you know, our solution or something else, and say, right, let me now go to the experts and let's get deep insight as to what they're seeing, and then let's drag out that information and combine it with other environmental factors, whether that be networks, whether that be, you know, CDN uptime, etc. It all becomes that one picture. And so to bring it back to what you were saying earlier, which is this digital command center, and in my head I'm picturing, like, you know, one of the old NOCs of the networks operation centers with 17 million screens around. It's about bringing all of that good information from the places that can get it most intelligently and the most succinctly, and bringing it together to show you that one view of what's happening. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I prefer the Star Trek bridge analysis.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Sounds a bit cool. But no, you're absolutely right. You know, and the more data feeds and integrations you've got hooked into this thing, the better. You know, there are some really good machine learning capabilities on the platform where we can take that data and overlay it against that architecture to give you that pinpoint accuracy. And that's exactly what the command center is about. You've got, and I always say, you don't just want ServiceNow dashboards in these command centers.
No.
You want, you know, your dashboard, you want AppD, you want Dynatrace, whatever other dashboards are there, but ServiceNow is driving and milking everything together and giving you that alarm and that alert and the actionable workflow item. But don't just think, you know, it's the answer to everything, because you need all of these other solutions built in around it. It will just handle the data load and the processing it so much quicker and better for you.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. I'm just looking here in terms of the other items we had on the agenda, and the next one, I particularly like your acronym here, which is WA. So tell me about WA. What is WA?
So WA is about workflow, orchestration, automation, and humans, and how you stitch it all together, right? So common use case, I think certainly when people tried to do this before as well, was we go and spend 2 million quid or whatever it is building and implementing this great solution, yada yada, it's going to do this, it's going to change the world, but the humans are never brought along with that journey. You know, so transformational or business change isn't kind of taken in as part of that. And also these systems, if you look back at, and I won't name any names when you're saying anything bad, but you look at some of these old systems, and people that have been in this space will know what they are. Where you walk into a command center and you've got this horrible grey looking screen, and, you know, just hundreds of lines of alarms, and most of them are either red or yellow. Or, you know, there's not much green in there. There's some blues for warnings. And you're like, shouldn't someone look at that? Like, it's always like that, you know? Yeah,
that one's fine. It always goes red at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday.
Exactly. So it's really about how you knit those kind of those key things together, right? So I'll start with workflow. You want to take all of these event sources in, process them, and move them through into event, alert, incident. Is it a major incident candidate? That's your automated workflow end to end. Then overlaying orchestration. So at the alert stage, can we have some orchestration in there, or orchestration and automation built together that even allows a human being to say, right, back out that last release, restart that server, you know, ping the switch, whatever it may well be. So there's a fork in the road that either a system is going to say, I'm going to attempt this to try and restore service because we understand the criticality and we've got authority as a system to do so, or a human's going to push a button because it's a high priority, or you're training the system. But then it's the humans at the end of it that need to understand what to do with all of this data, because you can just be killed in dashboards. But then understanding that if you see a red blob on a screen, and hopefully there's not too many red blobs because we've correlated and orchestrated it all out, you know, and it's all being brought together, that they can go into it within 4 clicks. They can be looking at the transaction or the line of code that's causing the issue and really start to deep grain and troubleshoot. So it's not viewing these things in isolation. It's viewing these things in an end-to-end
context.
Journey. Yeah, of course, in context. And that's really what WOA was all about, because whenever you say, we're going to do this for you, Mr. Customer, they usually go, whoa. A little bit cheesy, but that's where it came from.
I like it. I like it. I like that description as well. And it, when you describe it like that, talking about the context, I think everybody can get on board with that. John, go on. You look like you had something to say.
I was just a bit confused before, because the way you said it, Brenton, with your Irish tilt, it sounded like wah. And then now I see whoa. It's kind of making a bit more sense.
Yeah.
Well, so I got a question though. So one of the things that sort of keeps us awake at night is, does AIOps sort of really exist, or is it just a sort of a terminology for automation? Well, and in terms of thinking about woe, as you call it, and I like that a lot. In terms of thinking about that makes a lot of sense, right? But the question is, now when we come to really truly self-healing, do you sort of think it can happen where we really identify patterns that haven't been seen before? We identify solutions to those that exist because we've been able to read knowledge bases, solution articles, and we then automatically apply those solutions. Do you think that's really coming, or is that just talk?
Yeah, so and it's an interesting point, because it's a pet peeve of mine for a lot of companies out there that say, oh yeah, it's AI ops and it uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to make, you'll never have to list a finger again, Mr. Customer, because it's not that simple, right? There's a lot of training that goes into these models, and there's a lot of build to get the automation going. Now, AI ops does exist 100%. I've seen it, we've implemented it, we've done it for customers, but there are flavors of it. My favorite one I ever heard was human automation. I liked that one. That's another term for swivel sharing. A supplier out in the east somewhere, I won't name them again. But we have got systems out there that are learning at an astounding rate. They're not quite doing the journey that you described, where they're going and saying, reading a knowledge article. We've again built a solution where we can understand every event code that comes in across any vendor. So the event comes in, the system's looking at it, it does a lookup out to an external database, understands what that means, looks into the CMDB for the architectural structure to say, where does this sit and where's the severity and all the other parameters that goes around it, and then makes a deciding action. Number one, can I stop and start this service, restart the server, whatever that may well be? Or number two, do I tell a human being that they need to do something? And then trying to take that a bit further. Yeah, exactly. But trying to take it a bit further to understand, and this is where it starts to get tricky for non-off-the-shelf stuff or stuff that's been customized in a customer environment. I think SAP is a good example of this because of the flexibility. Salesforce is another one. If you've got people that are deving things on platform, making sure that they're writing decent error code definitions in there, so we can actually then take action. Exactly. And a lot of stuff that's been done out there doesn't have it, so there's a bit of retrofit that needs to go. Because there's no system that certainly exists at the moment that you can just plug in and go and say, go and learn this, and it's going to come back and say, oh yeah, I know how to support this application now, right? I don't think that's a million miles away. Probably 20 years into the future, we'll be doing that. But if you look at Sophia from the Loom offering, astoundingly clever AI engine that they've got in there. I've never seen anything that good at doing detailed log analytics and problem detection from binary text information. I think it's getting there. I think there are forms of it, but I don't think we're anywhere near the total end-to-end solution.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and I got sort of the two scenarios, actually, both from the same company, which I think is sort of fascinating. It's a big organization, and the first conversation I had with one of their senior leaders was talking about automating the S/4HANA upgrade or migration, whatever you want to call it, what was required to do it, the work effort. And so there are some tools out there that say they automate that. And this guy said, oh yeah, we've got that tool. He said, what our customers don't know is that I've got 20 people in India and they do all the analysis and they produce an automated report. And he said, and I don't care about the difference. I thought that was really interesting, and perhaps not very, perhaps practical, but probably not direction of where the market needs to go. And I spoke to another executive, and Brenton, we should ask him on the show sometime about AI ops use cases, and he describes some of the stuff he is doing, and they are consuming all of the ServiceNow, I think it is, ticketing data. They have analyzed that. They have then connected it to the vendors' websites, and they're kind of actively reducing support costs, pulling in help documentation, identifying the fixes, and they're not doing it automatically, right? They're going through workflows.
Yeah.
But they're identifying how problems were solved in the past, identifying similar solutions, and that struck me as really, really quite powerful, because the biggest problem that exists is the average level of expertise in a support team.
Yeah.
And then the second biggest problem is it's usually not the expert that's trying to fix the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the level 1, then the level 2, and it kind of goes wrong there because they don't know the solution. They don't have the experience of finding the root cause. And having a system that could find that strikes me as that's something that could really move the market forward. I mean, actually, I'll stop for a second.
Well, I think that's already there, and I think it was there in Remedy, and certainly the latest build on cloud. It's definitely there in ServiceNow with the integration into knowledge base, where through Agent Assist and the intelligence engine there that can take keyword matching and pull knowledge articles straight in on the agent workspace view for the incident. So I think that technology is kind of already there. I'd be interested to see what they're doing on pulling incident data out and processing out of the platform. Are they then pushing that information back in? I don't know what you can and can't say, but I'd be interested to find out more about that to see where they're trying to take it.
Yeah, I probably can't say much more than that without inviting him to speak to it.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
The nice thing is he's already expressed an interest, so hasn't he? If we're talking about the same person, perhaps we're talking about two different people.
I don't think you know who this is.
Oh, that's fine. So we're talking about two different people, but I think we have another customer who's very interested in coming on the show and has agreed to in the future, who is doing something similar. They're taking a little bit more of a manual approach, which is, yes, they're pulling the data out of the system from a historical perspective. They're analyzing it from a human perspective and saying, right, how often are we seeing this issue coming up? Now let's figure out how we automate the resolution of this going forward and make it a little bit more intelligent. How do we train the system so that it identifies this ahead of time the next time, rather than the reacting to it?
It's really interesting different people's approaches around the same problem.
Yeah.
Because I mean, personally, and we've built solutions like that for our clients that are out there, and I do everything on platform, and if you've got a full ITSM suite up and running, your instant problem change, etc., it's very, very easy when you then plug ITOM in to say, right, what are the correlations between these events and these alerts and the incidents that are coming off the back of it? Now, you can trace all of that stuff through from an automated system. Of course you can. Yeah. But then you can also feed that back through the context engines, and maybe it's just the solution that we've built, but we feed that back through to say, okay, how many times has this happened? And what was the priority of it happening? If it's happened 5 times, even if, think about the automated healing thing, right? We're stopping and starting a service to keep an application running, maybe via an orchestration through, Thousand Eyes or AppDynamics or one of the above. We want to then check to see how many times this is happening on the incident base. If it's happening more than 5 times, obviously a reoccurring problem, let's log a problem ticket for it and get a human being to then look at it. And that would be my way of approaching that, to keep it on platform and do all the data processing. So it's just interesting that a couple of people that are taking it off platform to process it and then bring it back into platform. I'd be quite interested to whiteboard that out if we can set up a chat with a chap. It'd be quite good. It'd be interesting.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that sort of leads me to the other thing, and I always forget how far behind SAP is, or the SAP market is. I don't want to accuse SAP specifically. The SAP market is in this stuff, because that person that I just described, not a customer, not an SAP customer,
right,
and people are just not doing this stuff in the SAP market. It's just bizarre. And we ran it was my thing this week. I've been on Talk Track about the survey that we ran with the Americas user group for SAP. And we found that something like 70% of customers don't see themselves as innovative and don't automate. I'm horribly simplifying the survey results and butchering it, but that's sort of how I see it in my very simple mind. But they want to, and it just sort of, I find it amazing, and I'm not sure I can reconcile why SAP is different to the rest of the market in this respect. Because Microsoft has had SCOM. I don't remember what it used to be called. It used to have a different name, but they've had that for 20 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been able to do some types of automation, some types of update. I mean, Microsoft Windows Update has been around for probably 20 years now, if not more. Did that exist? Windows 95, probably.
Cool. Yeah.
Windows 98, maybe.
The throwback there, yeah.
Long time ago. Yeah, long time ago. And obviously, everything else, your iPhones do that. But even, I guess with some of the Linux systems, they do that. But Oracle doesn't really do that. I don't know if they have a system for it, but SAP certainly doesn't. You want to update SAP, you got to pay a consultant, and the SIs love it that way.
Yeah, of course.
I can't. I'm interested if you've got any insight, but I can't figure out how the SAP market didn't get up to speed with this sooner. It's a problem we're happy to solve, but
yes.
Maybe it was perceived difficulty, or maybe it was designed that way. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that too much, but you're right. And I think Remedy had this big issue as well, right, back in the day, to do an upgrade to a Remedy system that had been massively customized or butchered a little bit off the shelf. You were looking at paying a consultancy agency. I've seen bills of a couple of £1 million and a 12-month program just to update from one version to the next. And then by the time you've gotten that version, you're
Remedy
update again. Yeah, Remedy. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And again,
and by the way, sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, and then look at the difference between upgrading process from Remedy and ServiceNow. I was with the great Chris Pope when he ran his innovation thing, and literally clicked a couple of buttons, and his instance of ServiceNow was upgraded, I think, in 3 hours, fully automated. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen like that for every customer unless you are completely out of the box, but I've done upgrades on the MOJ systems when I built and designed that before we did the ITOM days. Me and my team did an upgrade over a weekend. Just paid a couple of guys a bit of overtime, not £1 million deal, and a 12-month program is going to get it done, because these systems are built on newer platforms and new technologies. And I think SAP have got a lot of work to retrofit that in. It might be easier now they're moving into the cloud-based stuff. They've got the opportunity to kind of segue that through.
But they still have that large customer base, which, let's face it, aren't going to move. They're going to move, but they're not going to move fast.
Yeah, that's true.
That is the problem. And, go ahead, John.
Let me give you a simple example on that. I got a customer of mine in the past. Brenton's worked there as well, and they're in the rail industry, and they were looking to do an upgrade to S4. The conversation between the CIO and the CFO, as this actually happened, went a bit like this. He said, we need to modernize our core infrastructure. He said it's a $20 million program. The CFO looked at him. He said, well, we have a choice. So he said, we can do this, or we can buy another locomotive. What do you want me to do?
Wow. Yeah.
That's the scale of the problem here. It's fascinating. And I think, by the way, my point of view is that there are a bunch of causes of this. The first is that SAP is complicated by requirement and design. I mean, just the way it was created to be able to do anything for anyone, customizable in any way, running on any platform. There's nothing that is cross-platform the way SAP is. I mean, Microsoft isn't. They run Windows.
Yeah.
Oracle isn't. They don't have the breadth of solutions, and now it all runs on Oracle Linux. So SAP is traditionally run on every database platform. It's run on everything from Infomix to System Z. You can run it on anything you like, or to your run it on the laptop for that matter.
Yeah.
And that complexity has made it. And then the second thing is the closed ecosystem makes it look like a magic box. It's not. Teach anybody. I famously hired a guy out of the NHS, a hospital IT administrator, and
That's exactly what I was just thinking of.
Yeah. he doesn't have a university degree. There's no formal training in computer science, so but people believe it's a black box.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And I think that's caused the broader market. So I'm going to finish. Caused the broader market to ignore it, and then the market that does deal with it wants to charge $300 an hour for consulting services and has absolutely no interest in automating.
And have built very good businesses doing that.
Yeah. Well, they're drying up the red
market.
market.
I wonder, by the way.
Yeah. Exactly. By the way, John, it does help that the guy you're talking about,
unfortunately,
it was a genius. That did help. But there we go.
Yeah. I think the absolute direction of this, the absolute direction is building ITOM and AIOps in the core of these big ERP platforms. We've got a couple of customers. Well, we've got one very specific customer who I won't mention that we've helped automate full deployments of their stack, full deployments of ERP systems. It's not SAP, but I think they're approaching that the right way. Full automation for customers, self-diagnosis, amazing metric gathering and processing, either on platform or off, passing it through into a command center like a ServiceNow, Build, or so forth. That is the absolute future. And organizations that can marry those things together and give that breadth of offering are going to conquer not only low market or high market, but that massive mid-market space as well.
Yep.
That's where it all is. Because customers don't want to be spending a couple of million quid every 5 years to do an upgrade. They can't afford for these platforms to go down, so they need them to be diagnostic. They don't want to be going to consultants all the time to get this checked or that done or this, because it's just the project that never finishes. You're painting the Golden Gate Bridge. If you knit those things together in that layered sandwich and put them in the right order, that gives the customer the level of visibility that their own teams can support it and remove the shroud of the black box, like you were saying, then I think that's a real winner in the marketplace.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think we're actually coming towards the end of our time here, so that's quite a nice parting. I was going to ask you what your parting words of wisdom were, so I think unless you've any other ones to add, I think that's a good one to kind of end on. Before we close out, I know you're a fellow live streamer podcaster. Where can people get more information about your podcast?
So they can come to the website, itomsolution.com, and there's the podcast page there, or you can follow us on iHeartRadio, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's the ITOM Solution podcast that we've got going on there. A bit of a back catalogue. We've been really busy, so we took a break, but we're launching a brand new season. First recording, hopefully going out next week. And if I can just drop a plug that we're going to be exhibiting at Utilities Week live online or online live. It was supposed to be in person in a big thing in Birmingham, but now it's all shifted digital, and that's in November. So again, check out the website for more information.
Brilliant, absolutely. And from our side, a couple of things to plug. The first one is remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to get these for replay later on, or keep an eye out for our Crowdcast subscribe links, which we've now started sending out ahead of time, so you can register to ask questions or to interact with us as hosts. On the 16th of December, we've got a very special and slightly longer stream planned, where we're going to do a retrospective on 2020 and also some predictions into 2021. And maybe Phil, if you're around, you're more than welcome to join us on that one. It would be great to if you are around. We've already got a few guests lined up who've all confirmed, so we're starting to get a nice list together of stuff to talk about. So that one's going to be really cool. Have I covered everything, John, or did you want to talk briefly about the summit?
No, let's not cover that now. I'm not prepped for it, but I got another interview in 1 minute. I've got to go to the register
of all things. Well, listen, all that remains is
no. It's been an absolute pleasure. Is all I'd say. Always interesting to have a different perspective. We live in our little SAP island, so very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's been cool. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Anytime,
Phil. In doing that other one, and let's keep moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for joining us, Phil. See you next time.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.